Sometimes in life, the loudest move you can make is silence. We live in a world where everybody wants to prove a point, where everybody wants to clap back, where everybody feels like they have to defend themselves, explain themselves, or justify what they're doing. But there is power, divine power, in knowing when to keep your mouth shut, when to let silence speak louder than your words ever could. Sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever have to do is say nothing at all, because silence doesn't come naturally to us. We want to defend ourselves. We want to clap back. We want to explain, correct, justify, and prove. And when we feel overlooked, when we feel mistreated, when we feel misunderstood, everything in us rises up and says, I can't just sit here and take this. But there comes a point in your journey where you have to realize that silence is not weakness. It is wisdom. You see, wisdom knows when to speak and when to be still. Wisdom knows that not every battle requires your voice. Some battles are designed for God to fight on your behalf. And if you open your mouth too soon, if you step in where God was supposed to step in, you may block the very victory that was already headed your way. Sometimes the strongest move you can make is to step back and let silence speak for you. Think about Jesus standing before Pilate. The people accused him. They hurled lies, insults, and false charges against him. And the Bible says he opened not his mouth. That silence wasn't weakness. That silence was strength. Because sometimes silence says, I know who I am. I don't need to explain myself to people who were never meant to understand me. And I don't know who I'm talking to, but somebody here needs to stop wasting your words on people who will never get you, never support you, never believe in you. Save your breath. Keep your peace. Let your silence do the talking. Because silence is not empty. Silence is full. Silence is loaded with faith. Silence is saying, God, I trust you to handle this in ways I never could. Silence is saying, I don't have to prove anything because you are my proof. Silence is the quiet confidence that believes if I hold my peace, the Lord will fight my battles. Now hear me, silence is not passive. Silence doesn't mean you're doing nothing. Silence means you're doing the hardest work of all, disciplining yourself to trust instead of react. It takes more strength to stay silent than it does to argue. It takes more faith to let God handle it than to try and fix it yourself. Silence is not retreat, it's strategy. And here's the beautiful part: when you hold your tongue, when you refuse to waste your energy trying to convince people, God has a way of stepping into the silence. He has a way of speaking louder than your words ever could. He has a way of vindicating you in front of the very people who doubted you. You don't have to tell them what God is about to do. They're going to see it for themselves. There's somebody here who's been frustrated because your silence has been misunderstood. You think if you don't speak up, you'll be forgotten. You think if you don't fight back, you'll be defeated. But what you don't realize is that your silence is building your strength. Your silence is positioning you for favor. Your silence is teaching you to rest in the fact that God's promises don't need your defense. They only need your obedience. Think about a seed planted in the ground. That seed doesn't make any noise. It doesn't try to prove it's alive. It doesn't scream for attention. But in the silence of the soil, God is working. Roots are being established. Growth is happening. And in the right season, what was silent will become undeniable. That's what God is doing in you. Your silent seasons are not wasted seasons. They are working seasons. So don't despise the silence. Don't fight the stillness. Don't rush to fill the quiet with noise. Learn how to sit in it. Learn how to rest in it. Learn how to trust in it, because if you can trust God in the silence, He will reward you in the open. If you can hold your peace now, He will reveal His promise later. So I challenge you tonight, stop trying to prove yourself. Stop trying to fight battles with words. Stop wasting your energy on people who were never assigned to your destiny. Choose silence. Trust the strategy and watch how God turns your quietest moments into your loudest victories. Stay silent and you'll see everything come naturally. Here's a 650 word expansion for key point 2 of stay silent, everything will come naturally. Written in that powerful live preaching flow. When you learn how to embrace silence, you also learn something deeper. You learn the power of patience, because silence without patience is just bottled up frustration. But silence rooted in patience is strength under control. It's the ability to say, I don't have to rush. I don't have to rush. I don't have to push. I don't have to panic. God's timing is perfect, and when the moment is right, it will happen naturally. See, the problem for so many of us is not whether God can do it, it's whether He will do it when we want Him to. We struggle not with His power, but with His pace. We live in a world that celebrates instant gratification, quick fixes, microwave results. But the kingdom of God doesn't operate on human deadlines. God works in seasons, not seconds. And silence teaches you how to wait without complaining, how to endure without explaining, how to stay still without losing faith. Sometimes God will silence you because He's developing you. He knows that if He gives you what you're asking for before you're ready, you'll mishandle it. He knows that if He opens the door before the foundation is firm, you'll crumble under the weight of the blessing. So He keeps you in that quiet place. And while you're itching to move, while you're anxious to speak, He's teaching you patience. He's saying, hold on. I'm not just preparing the blessing for you. I'm preparing you for the blessing. That's why you can't despise the delay. Delay is not denial. Delay is development. And the proof that you trust God isn't shown in how loud you can shout when things go right. The proof that you trust Him is how still you can remain when nothing looks like it's changing. Can you worship in silence? Can you stand in patience? Can you wait on the Lord even when you don't see any sign of progress? Let me tell you this, patience is not passive, it's active. It means you keep working, you keep believing, you keep serving, you keep praying. but you don't force what only God can release. Patience is saying, Lord, I'll do my part, but I trust you to do yours. And when you can rest in that, it frees you from the stress of trying to make things happen in your own strength. Think about Abraham. God promised him a son, but the silence between the promise and the fulfillment stretched for years. And in that silence, Abraham had a choice, trust, or force. When he forced, he produced Ishmael. But when he waited, he received Isaac. Some of us are tired today, not because God isn't faithful, but because we've been exhausting ourselves trying to make an Ishmael instead of trusting God for the Isaac. And silence is God's way of saying, be still, stop pushing, let me do it in my time. You see, patience is really a form of faith. It's faith stretched out over time. It's saying, even if I have to wait, I still believe. Even if nothing changes today, I still trust. Even if the silence lingers longer than I want, I will not move out of place because I know God's timing is flawless. And let me reassure you, when God finally moves, when he finally breaks the silence, when he finally says, now it will make sense why you had to wait. The blessing will fit. The relationship will align. The opportunity will flow. And you'll look back and say, had I rushed it, I would have ruined it. But because I stayed silent, because I held my peace, everything came together naturally. So don't let your impatience talk you out of your promise. Don't let frustration push you into decisions that will cost you years of regret. Learn to trust the silence. Learn to wait with confidence, because when you stay patient, when you stay still, when you stay silent, everything will not only come together, it will come together in a way that only God could orchestrate. Stay patient in the silence and watch how naturally his promise unfolds. Here's a 650-word expansion for key point 3 of stay silent. Everything will come naturally. Crafted in that flowing, live, preaching tone, silence also has this powerful ability. It allows you to hear what you could never hear when you're surrounded by noise. Because sometimes the loudest voice in your life is not God's, it's your fears, it's your doubts. It's the opinions of people around you. And if you're not careful, you'll confuse their chatter with his direction. That's why God will often call you into silence. He's not punishing you. He's positioning you to hear him clearly. Think about it when the world is screaming, when emotions are raging, when the pressure is high. It's hard to distinguish his whisper, but in the stillness, in the quiet, his voice breaks through. Silence tunes your ears to his frequency. And many times the answer you've been looking for isn't in doing more, saying more, or trying more. It's in stepping back, quieting down, and allowing his voice to rise above all the rest. Some of you have been running from silence because silence forces you to confront truth. It forces you to face your own thoughts. It forces you to sit with the things you've been trying to drown out with activity, with conversations, with business. But what if the very healing you've been searching for is locked inside the silence you've been avoiding? What if the next level of clarity is waiting for you, not in another conversation, not in another opinion, but in the quiet presence of God? See, silence doesn't mean absence. Silence doesn't mean God has abandoned you. Silence means He's drawing you closer. It means He's stripping away the distractions so that His word can sink deep into your spirit. Because the truth is, you can't always hear direction in the middle of chaos. But when you hush the noise, when you let the dust settle, you realize that God's voice has been there the whole time, steady, consistent, faithful, guiding you step by step. And let me tell you this, hearing God clearly doesn't always come with lightning bolts or loud shouts. More often, it's a nudge. It's a gentle reminder. It's peace that settles in your heart. It's a conviction that won't let you rest until you obey. And if you're too busy talking, too busy explaining, too busy defending yourself, you'll miss it. That's why silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. Because only the wise know when to shut their mouth long enough to hear what really matters. When you learn to embrace silence, you discover that not every battle requires your words. Not every situation needs your explanation. Some things are better won in silence than lost in argument. There are people waiting for you to react, waiting for you to clap back, waiting for you to prove them wrong. But silence says, I don't need to win this fight with my words. God will handle it for me. Think about Jesus. When He stood before Pilate, accused by liars, surrounded by false witnesses, He stayed silent. He could have defended Himself. He could have called down heaven. He could have silenced them with one word, but He didn't, because He understood that silence wasn't weakness. It was strength. Silence wasn't defeat. It was destiny. He knew the cross was His path, and no amount of words could stop what was already divinely orchestrated. That's why you've got to stop thinking silence means surrender. Sometimes silence is the strongest response you can give. Sometimes silence is the strategy that disarms the enemy, confuses your critics, and clears the path for God's voice to take center stage. So the next time you're tempted to defend yourself, to prove your worth, to explain your side, stop, step back, stay silent. Because when you let silence do the talking, you'll find that God speaks louder than any accusation, stronger than any doubt, clearer than any confusion. In the quiet place, you don't just hear Him, you know Him. And when you know Him, you stop striving, you stop stressing, you stop fighting battles that were never yours to fight. Stay silent and watch how His voice drowns out every other sound. Here's a 650 word expansion for key point 4 of stay silent. Everything will come naturally. In that same flowing, live preaching tone, silence not only gives you the ability to hear God clearly, it also gives Him the room to fight battles you were never meant to fight. Because sometimes the more you talk, the more you stir up. The more you explain, the more ammunition you hand over to your enemy. But when you stay silent, when you choose not to let every thought out, when you learn to hold your tongue, you are saying, God, this is your fight. I will not waste my energy defending myself when I know you are my defense. That's hard, isn't it? Because we are wired to defend ourselves. We are quick to clap back, quick to prove people wrong, quick to make sure no one misunderstands us. But silence is trust. Silence says, I don't have to prove who I am because I know whose I am. Silence gives space for God to vindicate you in ways that words never could. Some of you have wasted sleepless nights replaying arguments in your head, wishing you had said this, regretting that you didn't say that. But let me tell you something, when God is your defender, you don't need the last word. You don't need to win the argument. You don't need to convince anyone, because when he speaks for you, his voice carries weight that no human voice can match. Think about Moses standing before Pharaoh. He wasn't eloquent, he wasn't polished, and he knew his speech wasn't strong, but God didn't need his eloquence, he needed his obedience. Moses' silence, his inability to rely on his own words, gave God room to display his power. It was God who turned rods into serpents. It was God who parted the sea. It was God who brought Pharaoh to his knees. And the same God who fought for Moses will fight for you if you'll stop trying to fight with your words and trust him with your silence. There are times when silence is the most powerful weapon you've got, because silence cannot be misquoted. Silence cannot be twisted. Silence cannot be used against you. And while they are busy talking, while they are busy lying, while they are busy trying to tear you down, your silence allows their words to fall flat. Because sooner or later, truth always rises and lies always collapse under their own weight. Now, don't get me wrong. Silence doesn't mean doing nothing. It means choosing the right battles. It means knowing when to let God speak for you. It means having the wisdom to discern when your words will build and when your words will only stir up more confusion. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is simply to shut your mouth and let God work. I know you want to justify yourself. I know you want to clear your name. I know you want everybody to know the real story. But silence says, I trust God enough to know he's already writing the story and he doesn't need my edits. Silence is surrender, and surrender is strength. Even Jesus showed us this. When he was led to the cross, when he was falsely accused, when they spit on him, mocked him, and demanded an explanation, he stayed silent. Why? Because he knew the fight was bigger than words. He knew his purpose couldn't be derailed by their accusations. His silence wasn't defeat. It was destiny. His silence wasn't weakness. It was power restrained for a greater purpose. And that's the kind of silence God is calling you into. Not the silence of defeat, not the silence of shame, not the silence of giving up, but the silence of strength, of trust, of faith that says, God, you've got this. I don't need to fight for myself because you're fighting for me. So when the pressure rises, when the critics speak louder, when the lies circle around you, resist the urge to speak. Resist the urge to defend. Resist the urge to explain, and instead step back, stand firm, and let your silence declare, God is my vindicator. Stay silent and watch him turn the noise of your enemies into the sound of his victory. Here's a 6 and 50 word expansion for key point 5 of stay silent. Everything will come naturally in that same deep, flowing, preaching rhythm. Silence doesn't just protect you from wasting energy. It positions you to receive clarity. You see, when you stop talking so much, when you stop running your mouth out of fear or frustration, your ears finally open to hear what God has been whispering all along. Because sometimes the reason you can't hear his direction is not that he isn't speaking, it's that you're too noisy to notice. Some of us are surrounded by so many voices, so many opinions, so much chatter that God's voice gets drowned out. And here's the truth: if you can't hear him, you can't follow him. If you can't follow him, you can't walk into the fullness of what he has prepared for you. That's why silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's creating space in your soul for his instructions to land. Think about Elijah. He stood on the mountain waiting to hear God's voice. A great wind came, but God wasn't in the wind. Then came an earthquake, but God wasn't in the earthquake. Then came a fire, but God wasn't in the fire. And finally, a still small voice. That's where God was. But Elijah could have missed it if he was only paying attention to the loud, dramatic moments. God revealed himself in a whisper, and only silence could make that whisper clear. That's what silence does for you. It tunes your spirit to the frequency of heaven. It helps you recognize when God is saying, turn left here. It helps you sense when he is nudging you, not now, wait. It opens your inner eyes to see doors that are opening and opportunities that are aligning. And without silence, you run the risk of mistaking noise for guidance. This is why the enemy loves to keep you distracted. He knows if he can fill your life with enough arguments, worries, doubts, endless scrolling, meaningless conversations, you won't have the space to hear the still, small voice that carries your breakthrough. But when you choose silence, when you shut down the noise, when you pull back from all the distractions, suddenly you start to notice things you were blind to before. Sometimes the miracle is already around you, but you can't see it until you silence yourself. Sometimes the solution is already in your hands, but you don't realize it until you stop talking long enough to let the Spirit reveal it. Silence sharpens your vision. It clears the fog. It gives you perspective. There's a reason why Jesus often withdrew to quiet places to pray. He knew that even he couldn't fulfill his mission surrounded by constant voices and noise. He needed silence to align his heart with the Father's will. If he needed it, how much more do we? And silence isn't just about hearing God's voice. It's about hearing your own soul again. Because life has a way of making you forget who you are. But when you sit in stillness, when you stop explaining, defending, or proving, you rediscover the strength and clarity that was in you all along. You remember what he put in you. You remember his promises. You remember that your worth doesn't come from people's approval, but from His calling. So the next time you're tempted to rush ahead, to panic, to fill the air with words because you don't like the uncertainty, I dare you, be silent. Sit in the tension. Hold your peace and watch how clarity rises. Watch how wisdom shows up. Watch how answers start coming that you didn't even have to ask for. Because silence is not emptiness, it's space for God's fullness. It's not inactivity, it's preparation for clarity. It's not loss, it's alignment. Stay silent and you'll discover that what you were chasing was waiting for you all along. Here's the 60-50 word expansion for key point 6 of stay silent, everything will come naturally. Carrying the same flow and intensity, there's something powerful about realizing that when you stop trying to control everything, life begins to align the way it was meant to. Silence isn't just about words, it's about surrender. It's about letting go of the need to force outcomes, manipulate situations, or prove yourself to people who were never meant to validate you in the first place. Silence teaches you to trust that what is for you will find you. Too often, we wear ourselves out trying to open doors that God never intended us to walk through. We pound on walls, we beg for acceptance, we chase after opportunities, all while ignoring the gentle pull that says, be still, trust me, I've got this. And the beauty of silence is that it becomes a posture of faith. It says, I don't have to fight this battle with my voice. I don't have to explain myself to everybody. I don't have to prove my worth to people who can't see it. My silence is my trust that God is moving even when I can't. Think about the children of Israel walking around Jericho. For 6 days they marched in silence, no shouting, no noise, just steps of obedience. Then on the 7th day, when the time was right, their voices broke the silence and the walls came crashing down. Do you see the pattern? Their silence was not wasted. It was preparation. Their silence positioned them for victory. Their silence built discipline, trust, and anticipation. And when the breakthrough came, it came suddenly and completely. Sometimes silence is the very strategy God gives you for victory. While the world tells you to fight back, clap back, or speak louder, heaven might be saying, stay silent, hold your peace, watch me move. Because silence is not inactivity, it is trust in divine timing. It is believing that when the moment comes, everything will fall into place without you having to wear yourself out trying to make it happen. And here's the beautiful thing: when you stay silent long enough, when you refuse to force it, you begin to see how God lines things up in ways you never could. The right people show up without you begging. The right opportunities appear without you pushing. The resources you need start finding their way to you. It doesn't happen because you manipulated or maneuvered your way into it. It happens because you surrendered. Silence created space for it to flow naturally. But this kind of silence requires courage. It takes faith to stop talking, to stop explaining, to stop trying to defend every move you make. It takes faith to be misunderstood and not rush to clear your name. It takes faith to be overlooked and not try to make yourself seen. But when you can stand in silence, when you can trust that God sees what others overlook, when you can wait without forcing, you're saying, I trust that what's mine cannot miss me. And maybe that's the lesson for somebody today. You don't have to chase what God has assigned to you. You don't have to fight for what He's already promised. If it's yours, silence won't make you lose it. In fact, silence will allow it to come naturally in the right time, in the right way, without you destroying yourself, trying to hold it all together. So don't despise the silence. Don't run from the quiet. Don't assume that stillness means nothing is happening. Behind the silence, God is aligning. Behind the silence, He's preparing. Behind the silence, doors are opening, hearts are turning, opportunities are shifting, and blessings are being arranged with your name on them. Stay silent and watch how everything you've been praying for begins to unfold without you forcing it. Stay silent and watch how the pieces you've been trying to hold together fall into place on their own. Stay silent, because sometimes the loudest statement of faith is made without a word. Stay silent and everything will come naturally.